हेलो दोस्तों, बिगनर्स माइंड में आपका स्वागत है। और अभी हम कर रहे हैं इकोनॉमिक्स, जो कि है चैप्टर नंबर 2। चैप्टर नंबर 1 हमने कर लिया है। अगर नहीं देखा तो पुरानी वीडियो में जाकर देख सकते हैं। और ये जो चैप्टर नंबर 2 है, ये 10th क्लास का। 9th क्लास के सभी चैप्टर कर लिए पुरानी वीडियो में, प्ले लिस्ट में सब हैं। सेक्टर्स ऑफ द इंडियन इकोनॉमी के सेक्टर्स के बारे में यहाँ पे चर्चा की गई है। सेक्टर्स ऑफ इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटीज, लेट अस लुक at these pictures. You will find that people are engaged in various economic activities. Some of these are activities producing goods, some others are producing services. These activities are happening around us every minute, even as we speak. How do we understand these activities? One way of doing this is to group them, classify them using some important criterion. These groups are also called sectors. जैसे कि ये है, एक सेक्टर ये है ईंट वगैरह का, एक कपड़े का, खेती, फार्मिंग, कूली, ये टाइप के सेक्टर हुए सब। We begin by looking at different kind of economic activities. अब प्राइमरी सेक्टर होता है एक, सेकेंडरी और एक होता है टर्शरी। प्राइमरी सेक्टर में कौन कौन सी चीज़ें होती हैं? प्राइमरी सेक्टर होता है एग्रीकल्चर, ठीक है, खाना पीना, फार्मिंग हो गई, और ये गौपालन, कोल वगैरह हो गया। इसको हम ऐसे भी देख सकते हैं, प्रोड्यूस नेचुरल गुड्स, जो कि नेचुरल चीज़ों से जुड़ा होता है, वो होता है प्राइमरी। उसके बाद सेकेंडरी इंडस्ट्रियल होता है, कपड़े वगैरह हो गए, कार, चेयर, प्रोड्यूस मैन्युफैक्चर्ड गुड्स। जो सर्विस होता है, सेवाएं होती है, जैसे ट्रक, या फिर ये सर्विस चौकीदारी, ये पता नहीं क्या है, ये सर्विस सब्जी बेचना और ये सब। और ये कंप्यूटर, हेल्प टू डेवलप अदर सेक्टर्स। There are many activities that are undertaken by directly using natural resources. Take, for example, the cultivation of cotton. It takes place within a crop season. For the growth of the cotton plant, we depend mainly, but not entirely, on natural factors like rainfall, sunshine, and climate. The product of this activity, cotton, is a natural product. Similarly, in the case of an activity like dairy, we are dependent on the biological process of the animals and availability of fodder, etc. The product here, milk, also is a natural product. Similarly, minerals and oreos are also natural products. When we produce a good by exploiting natural resources, it is an activity of the primary sector. Why primary? This is because it forms the base for all other products that we subsequently makes. Since most of the natural products we get are from agriculture, dairy, fishing, forest, forestry, this sector is called agriculture and related sector. The secondary sector covers activities in which natural products are changed into other forms through ways of manufacturing that we associate associate with industrial activity. It is the next step after primary. The product is not produced by nature but has to be made, and therefore some process of manufacturing is essential. This could be in factory, a workshop, or at home. For example, using cotton fiber from the plant. The spin yarn and weave cloth. Using sugarcane as a raw material, we make sugar or good. We convert earth into bricks and use bricks to make houses and buildings. Since this sector gradually became associated with the different kinds of industries that came up, it also called as industrial sector. After primary and secondary, there is a third category of activities that falls under tertiary sector and is different from the above two. These are activities that help in the development of the primary and secondary sectors. These activities by themselves do not produce a good, but they are an aid or a support for the production process. For example, goods that are produced in the primary or secondary sector would need to be transported by trucks or trains and then sold in wholesale or retail shops. At times, It may be necessary to store these in go downs. We also may need to talk to others over telephone or send letters, communications, or borrow money from banks banking to help. Production and trade, transport, storage, communication, banking, trade are some examples of tertiary activities. Since these activities generate service rather than goods, the tertiary sector is also called the service sector. Service sector also includes some essential services that may not directly help in the production of goods. For example, we require teachers, doctors, and those who provide personal services such as washermen, barbers, cobblers, lawyers, and people to do administrative and accounting works. In recent times, certain new services based on information technology such as internet cafe, ATM booths, call centers, software companies, etc. have become important. Economic activities through are grouped into three different categories are highly interdependent. Let us look some examples. Imagine what would happen if farmers refuse to sell sugarcane to a particular sugar mill. The mill will have to shut down. और शो क्या हो रहा है? This is an example of secondary or industrial sector being dependent on the ये अपने आप करना ठीक है. Comparing the three sectors, the various production activities in the primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors produce a very large number of goods and services. Also, the three sectors have a large number of people working in them to produce these goods and services. The next step, therefore, is to see how much goods and services are produced and how many people work in each sector. In an economy, there could be one or more sectors which are dominant in terms of total production and employment, while other sectors are relatively small in size. How do we count the various goods and services and know the total production in each sector? With so many thousands of goods and services produced, you might think this is an impossible task. Not only would the task be enormous, you might also wonder how we can add up cars and computers and nails and furniture. It won't make sense. You are right in thinking so. To get around this problem, economists suggest that the values of goods and services should be used rather than adding up the actual numbers. For example, if 10,000 kilograms of wheat is sold at 20 per kg, the value of wheat will be 2000 2 lakh. The value of 5,000 coconuts at rupees 15% coconut will be 75,000. Similarly, the value of goods and services in the three sectors are calculated and then added up. Remember, there is one precaution one has to take. Not every good or service that is produced and sold needs to be counted. It makes sense only to include the final goods and services. Take, for instance, a farmer who sells wheat to a flour mill for 20 per kg. The mill grinds the wheat and sells the flour to a biscuit company for rupees 25 per kg. The biscuit company uses the flour and things such as sugar and oil to make 4 packets of biscuits. It sells biscuits in the market to the consumers for rupees 80 20 per packet. Biscuits are the final goods, that is goods that reach the consumers. Why are only final goods and services counted? In contrast to final goods such as wheat and the wheat flour in this example are intermediate goods. Intermediate goods are used up in producing final goods and services. The value of final goods already includes the value of all the intermediate goods that are used in making the final good. Hence, the value of rupees 80 for the biscuits final good already includes the value of flour 25. Similarly, the value of all other intermediate goods would have been included. To count the value of the flour and wheat separately is therefore not correct, because then we would be counting the value of the same things a number of times. First has wheat, then has flour, and finally has biscuits. The value of final goods and services produced in each sector during a particular year provides the total production of sector for that year, and sum of production in the different sectors give what is called the gross domestic product (GDP) of a country. It is the value of all final goods and services produced within a country during a particular year. GDP shows how big the economy is. In India, the mammoth task of measuring GDP is undertaken by a central government ministry. The ministry, with the help of various government departments of all the Indian states and union territories, collects information relating to total volume of goods and services and their price and then estimate the GDP. Recently, Indian government began to bring out the contribution of three sectors towards gross value added (GVA) in place of the contribution of three sectors towards gross domestic product to be a, to be at par with global practices. The GVA measures the contribution of three sectors of an economy after adjusting for taxes and subsidies. You will learn more about the GVA and the difference between GDP and GVA in higher classes. Here we will only understand how goods and services produced in these three sectors, primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors, have changed. Historical change in sectors. Generally, it has been noted from the histories of many now developed countries that at initial stage of development, primary sector was the most important sector of economic activity. As the methods of farming changed and agriculture sector began to prosper, it produced much more food than before. Many people could now take up other activities. There were increasing number of craft persons and traders. Buying and selling activities increased many times. Besides, there were also transporters, administrators, army, etc. However, at this stage, most of the goods produced were natural products from the primary sector, and most people were also employed in this sector. Over a long time, more than 100 years, कितना 100 साल से ज़्यादा, and especially because new methods of manufacturing were introduced, factories came up and started expanding. Those people who had earlier worked on farms now began to work in factories in large numbers. They were forced to do so. As you read in history chapters, people began to use many more goods that were produced in factories at cheap rates. Secondary sector gradually became the most important total production and employment. Hence, over time, a shift had taken place. This means that the importance of the sectors has changed. In the past 100 years, there has been a further shift from secondary to tertiary sector in developed countries. The service sector has become the most important in terms of total production. Most of the working people are also employed in the service sector. This is the general pattern observed in developed countries. What is the total production and employment in the three sectors in India? Over the years, have there been changes similar to the pattern observed for the developed countries? We shall see in the next section. Primary, secondary, or tertiary sectors in India. Graph 1 shows the production of goods and services in the three sectors. This is shown for 2 years, 1977-78 and 2017-18. We have used the data for these 2 years because the data are comparable and authentic. You can see how the total production has grown over the 40 years. GVA by primary, secondary and tertiary. ये कितना है? ये 1977 78 में था और ये 17-18 का डाटा है. इस टाइम पे 12 लाख है और यहाँ पे कितना था? 2 लाख से भी कम. Rising importance of tertiary sector in production over the 40 years between 1778 and 2017 17-18. While production in all the three sectors has increased, it has increased the most in the tertiary sector. As a result, in the year 2017-18, the tertiary sector has emerged as the largest producing sector in India, replacing the primary sector. Why is the tertiary sector becoming so important in India? There could be several reasons. First, in any country, several services such as hospitals, educational institutions, post and telegraph services, police stations, courts, village administrative offices, municipal corporations, defense, transport, banks, insurance companies, etc. are required. These can be considered as basic services. In an developing country, the government has to take responsibility for the provision of these services. Second, the development of agriculture and industry leads to the development of services such as transport, trade, storage, and the like, as we have already seen. Greater the development of the primary and secondary sectors, more would be the demand for such services. Third, as income level rises, certain section of people start demanding many more services like eating out, tourism, shopping, private hospitals, private schools, professional training, etc. You can see this change quite sharply in cities, especially in big cities. Fourth, over the past decades or so, certain new services such as those based on information and communication technology have become important and essential. The production of these services has been rising rapidly. In chapter 4, we shall see examples of these new services and the reasons for their expansion. However, you must remember that not all of the service sector is growing equally well. Service sector is in India employs many different kinds of people. At one end, there are a limited number of services that employ highly skilled and educated workers. At the other end, there are a very large number of workers engaged in services such as small shopkeepers, repair persons, transport persons, etc. These people barely manage to earn a living, and yet they perform these services because no alternative opportunities for work are available to them. Hence, only a part of this sector is growing in importance. You shall read more about this in the next section. Where are most of the people employed? Graph 2 presents percentage share of the three sectors in GVA. Now you can directly see the changing importance of the sectors over the 40 years. Graph 2 shares share of the sectors in GVA 1978 77 78 2017 18 100 तो यहाँ तक हो जाएंगे, पूरे हो गए लगभग 70 कहाँ पे थे 1778 में शेयर्स, और अब कितने हैं? तो टर्शरी सेक्टर क्या है, थर्ड सेक्टर जो है वो इंक्रीज हुआ है, सेकेंडरी थोड़ा कम हुआ है और प्राइमरी कम हुआ है. A remarkable fact about India is that while there has been a change in the share of the three sectors in GVA, a similar shift has not taken place in employment. Graph 3 shows the share of employment in the three sectors in 1977-78 and 2017-2018. The primary sector continues to be the largest employer even now. Share of sectors in employment percentage 100, पहले कितने थे 18 शेयर थे, तो फिर अब कितने हुए 31%. Why did not a similar shift out of primary sector happen in case of employment? It because not enough jobs were created in the secondary and tertiary sectors. Even through industrial output of or the production of goods went up by more than 9 times during the period. Employment in the industry went up by around 3 times. कितना? 3 times. The same applies to the tertiary sector as well. While production in the service sector rose by 14 times, employment in the service sector rose around 5 times. As a result, more than half of the workers in the country are working in the primary sector, mainly in agriculture, producing only about one-sixth of the GVA. In contrast to this, the secondary and tertiary sectors produce the rest of the produce, whereas they employ less, about the half of the people. Does this mean that the workers in agriculture are not producing as much as they could? What it means it is that there are more people in agriculture than is necessary. So even if you move a few people out, production will not be affected. In other words, workers in the agricultural sectors are underemployed. For instance, take the case of a small farmer Lakshmi owning about 2 hectares of unirrigated land dependent only on rain and growing crops like jowar and arhar. All 5 members of her family work in the plot throughout the year. Why? They have nowhere else to go for work. You will see that everyone is working, none remains idle, but in actual fact, their labor if effort gets divided. Each one is doing some work, but no one is fully employed. This is the situation of underemployment where people are apparently working, but all them are made to work less than their potential. This kind of underemployment is hidden in contrast to someone who does not have a job or and is clearly visible as unemployment. Hence, it is also called distinguished unemployment. Now, supposing a landlord Sukhram comes and hires one and 2 members of the family to work on his land. Lakshmi's family is now able to earn some extra income through wages since you do not need 5 people. Look after that small plot. 2 people moving out does not affect production on their farm. In the above example, 2 people may move to work in a factory. Once again, the earnings of the family would increase and they would also continue to produce as much their land. There are lakhs of farmers like Lakshmi in India. This means that even if we remove a lot of people from agricultural sector and provide them with proper work elsewhere, agricultural production will not suffer. The incomes of the people who takes up other work would increase the total family income. This underemployment can also happen in other sectors. For example, there are thousands of casual workers in the service sectors in urban areas who search for daily employment. They are employed as painters, plumbers, repair persons, and other doing odd jobs. Many of them don't find work every day. Similarly, we see other people of the service sector on the street pushing a cart or selling something where they may spend the whole day but earn very little. They are doing this work because they do not have better opportunities. ठीक है, इसके बाद ये पढ़ेंगे अब यहाँ से कल।